Today, I want to talk about AI and job loss. And the reason why is because recently there was some consideration paid to, oh shoot, there are secondary effects where people are going to lose a lot of jobs. And the reason why this is so interesting is because originally, and I'm very guilty of this as well, there's been a lot of focus on job loss around, well, people are getting laid off or new people are not being hired because they're being replaced by AI. But I think there is an area where entire industries are going to be completely replaced and not even necessarily intentionally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at a video that outlines how some of these instances might actually occur, some of the industries that may be affected by this, and what that means over a longer period of time. So let's get into the video, and then I will add my thoughts on it as well. Hi there, pardon the interruption. I just wanted to make a real quick ask that if you are watching my content and you appreciate it, if you could please drop me a subscription. As you can see, through the life of my channel, 95% of the people that watch my content are not subscribed. So if you are watching and you find yourself enjoying the content, I would ask that you drop a subscription. Just, again, a really quick PSA. It would mean a lot to me. It really does help my channel grow, and it allows me to make this something that I can do for a living. So just wanted to take a real quick interruption, and I'll return you back to my video. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy.
Speaking of the market, we have a lot of very interesting and troubling news going on there. The futures are down this morning. There was a significant drop in the market yesterday, and it seems to be because there is a bit of an oh shit moment happening with regard to what AI is going to mean for our economy. So let's go ahead and put this Wall Street Journal tear sheet up on the screen. And the TLDR here of a number of news reporting that I'm going to show you in just a moment is that non-techies, such as myself, are beginning to really reckon with, okay, AI development might be good for this handful of companies that are leading the way, but what about all of these other tech companies whose services are going to be effectively taken over by these AI agents? So one of those industries is, they say AI threatens a Wall Street cash cow, financial and legal data. And just if you think about it logically,
And this is essentially why I want to talk about it, is because there are, I think, two types of replacement, right? There's the replacement that I think a lot of people, including myself, talk about and bring attention to the most, which is, okay, companies are going to be leveraging AI and it's going to be replacing individuals, right? So it's going to be, oh yeah, Jim retired, we're not hiring anyone to fill his position because someone using AI is basically doing both of those jobs. That's type one, right? Or the job, the company is just buying up a bunch of data and tokens and they're using that to replace workers. So that's type one, right? Where it's actually replacing the workers individually within a company. But then type two, which I think has been vastly underreported and just people haven't thought about it in general, is exactly this, where it is entire industries that were a niche, like a knowledge worker, or going out and, oh yeah, they synthesize all this data and they bring you the results of it, that now are no longer going to be needed, because instead of hiring some consultant, you can just have those insights directly from the AI. And it doesn't even have to be directly thought about of like, oh yeah, we're going to bring in consultants. There's a second order effect to this where now everyone can utilize the best strategies, if you will, right? Like the leadership team can ask, oh yeah, given, where we are and here's our, the problems that we're seeing in our company and what are strategies that you would suggest. Like they could ask this to an AI. They could get it from a free version. Like you don't even need to pay for an AI to get this. But if you do, and it's okay, well now your marketing department, your sales department, your product department. All these departments now will be operating at maximum efficiency, whereas before there might have just been shortcomings that certain people or leadership within those departments, okay, they don't really, they weren't maybe the top people, and so your company may have been lagging behind the competition. But now, in a world where all of those people who are leading those departments are all utilizing AI, well, now they have access to the best strategies. Like, all of them are going to perform at a very high level if they're utilizing AI. So it's not even that it's directly replacing, but also the increased operating efficiencies from using it will reduce the need for going out and hiring consulting companies to basically fill in blind spots of where are our operating inefficiencies. So yeah, it's not even that it's directly replacing them or that it's replacing through replacing certain jobs and people through increased productivity of the people who are already working there. But then it's also just these other companies are not going to be necessary at all, because just utilizing AI will remove the need for them.
If you're paying and people who are, inside, like traders and who are in the industry, they pay big bucks for these services to analyze financial and legal information. Well, if you have a free or a very low cost AI agent that can do all of that for you in a custom way, are you really going to shell out those dollars for these subscriptions? So I'll read you a little bit of this.
Yeah, and this is such a big issue that there are a bunch of the companies that do the legal documents and stuff, they have actually been seeding so that the AI cannot replace them. They saw the writing on the wall. This is like months and months and months and months ago that I heard about this. But these companies that basically give you access to these documents and they basically act as a repository for it. They have been seeding online false documents so that the AI trains on them so that they can basically protect their business model. So yeah, they have seen the writing on the wall for a while, but exactly to the point, because they charge so much for these services, it is completely incentivized that they protect that, because it's not worth the amount of money that they charge for these sorts of things. And especially in this instance where, yes, you can pay a few $100s and have access to all of this, and you no longer are needing to pay tens of thousands plus dollars to these sorts of companies.
Article, they say for years it seemed like a surefire business model: amass vast troves of financial data and sell it to Wall Street for a premium. Then Claude came along, and that's Anthropic's product. Shares of companies like S&P Global, MSCI, Intercontinental Exchange, London Stock Exchange Group, FactSet Research Systems all tumbled this week after fast-growing artificial intelligence startup Anthropic unveiled a new suite of tools for automating legal tasks. The new legal plugin for Anthropic's co-work assistant, powered by its AI model Claude, didn't seem to have much to do with financial data. Nonetheless, LSEG, which has spent years pivoting away from its traditional stock exchange business to selling data and analytics, slid 13% on Tuesday before inching lower on Wednesday. And so again, the theory here is that people are really starting to be able to envision what AGI and what already the capabilities that AI has is going to mean for these different markets. Now, what these companies, to give their side of the story, what they say, the ones that are doing all this financial analysis, they say, yeah, but we have our own proprietary data that Claude is not going to have access to. But, at least as of today, investors are...
And some of them might, right, if it's a super narrow niche and it's very, very specialized. And so they might have some more inside information. However, my thought on that is that doesn't really matter, because that is the one thing that these AI agents can do, and just AIs in general, is they synthesize all of the data out there. So you can go in and it'll scrape everything, and you will get, in my opinion, as good of a picture or so close to whatever they could tell you, that as long as you have people who are able to understand what the takeaways and the actual actionable data is within those data sets, you absolutely do not need any of these companies. And it's so funny because, yeah, all these things where they're not actually, and I think this is actually, in this case, this very, narrow instance. I don't think the other case where people's jobs are being eliminated, but any of these companies that are basically just financial companies that they're selling you things that they're not actually adding anything of use or anything of value to the United States GDP at all. It's literally just companies existing on the backs of other companies that actually do things. Cry a tear for that. Play me the smallest violin in the world, because I could not care less that these types of companies are being completely obliterated, because I never thought that they were doing anything particularly unique or valuable in general. And so the fact that now they're getting exposed and that AI is easily replacing them, I'm not particularly upset. And in fact, anytime that I've worked for a company that has used one of these companies, it just exposed to me that the leadership at those companies were complete trash. Because I'm sorry, but in some instances, if they have competitive data about your competition and you're basically paying them to give you insights into what they're doing, I kind of get it, right? Because that may not have really been readily available. But if the leadership was using it for anything aside from that, it just exposed to me that they were complete idiots and that none of them actually knew what they were doing, and they probably just failed upwards. Because I'm sorry, but if you are being paid at the highest level millions of dollars to strategize what the business is supposed to be doing, why then would you ever pay tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to another company to come in and tell you what to do? If I was a board member, I would immediately fire the CEO of any company that did that. That's just how I've always thought about it. So I am slightly biased. I will say, I will admit my bias that I think that these companies are complete trash to begin with, and they should be completely snuffed out. So in this instance of these types of companies being destroyed, I am not upset whatsoever about it, but it will create a lot of job loss, and it will, there is pain that is going to be felt in the market because of it. But once again, my viewpoint on these companies is they do not add actually anything useful to the economy. And again, it's just companies surviving on the backs of other companies.
Betting, that's not going to be sufficient. And by the way, as their capabilities develop, how much of this data is going to continue to be off limits and continue to be proprietary, where you have to pay to gain access to it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you continue to look at, and by the way, these stocks have been on wild swings. So LSEG went down by 15%, then back up by 8%. It's difficult to track like day to day, but the overall point is that the Claude code, which again, I'm a Claude subscriber. I don't think I pay more than 150 bucks to be able to use the product. If I can just simply go in there, use their AI legal tool and analysis tool to automate or get, let's say, 80% of the way that I could have been previously for.
Yeah, exactly, because it's billable hours. And I have thought this for a very long time is, yeah, okay, maybe in the early stages it wasn't so good at legal stuff, but I think depending on how complex you actually need that to be, right? Like for 99% of stuff, is using an AI just as good? Like for the actual outcomes that you're getting, like are people going to scrutinize? Because I can tell you, I've done legal contracts in the past and like written up documents and had to go through this sort of stuff before. What you do is you could 100% have any AI write up a legal agreement for you, send it to the company that you're supposed to be agreeing with. They have their people look at it if they have their own lawyers, and then they send it back to you. So it's not like it needs to be perfect on the first pass anyway. So I have long thought that legal is a very ripe industry to be completely upset by AI. At least when it gets to a certain threshold that it's good enough. and that people won't be able to immediately call out that, oh yeah, this is just, you're using an AI system for it. So once it gets to that level, and I think it's probably there now, and because these lawyers, because the thing is lawfare in the United States has basically shot the fees that lawyers are able to charge, and just how perverse and endemic it is to everything that we do. It has made it way too lucrative of an industry to go into. And so when that happens, well, now you have the biggest target on your back. So it's kind of a victim of your own success in the fact that it can displace so much of the workforce and capture so much GDP by replacing lawyers. Well, then that's where the incentive is. Of course they're going to do that. And so that is one of the industries that they're going to go after and is going to get disrupted first. So just all of that saying, I think it is very easy to disrupt as well, because you just load a bunch of documents into it and you say, oh yeah, this is how you format a dispute letter, or this is how you format a cease and desist, or this is how you format a prenuptial agreement, or this is how you format whatever it is that you are trying to create with AI. You can basically just put it in there, and then it will give you something that is, to the point that they were just saying, like 80% of the way there. And then if you're sending it to another party, or if it's just an agreement between two people, or whatever it is that you're using it for, if it's good enough to get most of the way there and then they make their edits and send it back to you, that is really all you needed to do. It's basically, are you including all the things that you should probably be thinking about in creating this agreement? And that's basically what lawyers were doing for you. That was the value that they were adding to when you're coming up with these types of agreements. And then after that, you just need someone to notarize it, like a bank or something. And you literally don't need lawyers at all, right? Except for obviously if they need it, or whatever it is, right? There's still the last little sliver of, getting over the hump and making sure that it's fully executed and signed off on, and all that kind of stuff, which you can also do through like DocuSign or something like that. So you don't even need them for that. So that is where I'm just saying, like, I think it's already there. I think the usefulness of lawyers, especially low level, right? There are some of the higher ones where it's like trial lawyers and that kind of stuff, that they are still going to be useful, right? But there are a ton of lesser lawyers, I will call them, not to demean their job, but kind of, right? Because I'm basically saying you're replaced by AI right now. And by the way, marketing is like 99% replaced by AI as well. So like, it's not that I'm specifically calling you out and demeaning you, because what I do, I demean it just as much. But that is, at the end of the day, lawyers are content creation for these documents, at least the ones that we're talking about here. And so of course they're going to be replaced. Because like I said, lawfare in the US has become such a market that it's just basically milking people for money, anyone who needs legal advice. So of course it's going to get upset. Where's the largest margin for replacement and for these companies to cash in on replacing the people so that they no longer have to do this sort of work?
Something that costs tens of thousands of dollars, the asymmetry of that wipes out any real ability or want to have to pay for a lot of these types of premium products. And actually, it's kind of fascinating, because what you're watching is the destruction. And we've talked about white collar work, and we've also talked about legal work. What you are watching is the destruction of the high dollar, almost management consulting, data-based industry. So like the McKinseys and all of these other people who would come in and they would do proprietary slideshows and all of that. And again, look, while I don't think that AI is going to cure cancer or any of that, I do think it's pretty good at automating some of the most base tasks and data collection and putting that stuff in there. Obviously, you still need a little bit of quality control, but the amount of brute force that people used to have to do, especially if you were an Excel jockey and all that, a lot of it is starting to go away and has been now for years, but especially accelerated with AI. So if all of that goes away instantaneously, relatively, like in market terms, for 5-year period, and you can see a path to almost 80 to 100% automation, that is going to actually nuke a significant sector of our economy. What's really scary about this, and we can put the next one up here on the screen, is this reveals actually some of the dangers of the way that our modern economy has structured. I've tried warning about this for years. We are a completely service-based economy, which is great until all the services get automated and rolled up into AI. So while our GDP overall may actually increase because the stocks of Google, Anthropic, and all these OpenAI will increase, the number of jobs that will be there may reduce. And it's not like we have stuff and companies that make a lot of things, physical things, steel, or any manufacturing base that we have, to be able to absorb any of this. So
and that's exactly why I call it out. And what I said earlier, where I said, oh yeah, these companies aren't making anything. They're not doing anything that is of value. They're not adding, they're not creating new products. They're not doing any of these sorts of things. And that's why I think globalization was so awful, is because it shipped that component out overseas, and then it allowed us to be service-based or financialized or whatever. So there is some stuff that is still made here, but the vast majority of it has been shipped out. And this is exactly the problem with that, is you're seeing, I don't think a lot of these industries really did anything particularly useful. I think, once again, it was there. This is basically all stood up because the things that were still made here or were, it was shipped over and it was manufactured somewhere else, but most of the white collar work was still held here in the United States. When that is happening and these companies are just basically subsisting themselves off of the back of the companies who are still making things, that is a big problem, because then when something comes along, there's nothing to fall back on, and it can completely collapse those industries. Once again, I'm not really shedding any tears here, because I think those companies were not doing anything actually useful to begin with. And I think now this forces a reckoning of, okay, we need to find something where we're actually doing something useful. But I think even then it's probably going to get replaced with AI anyway. So it may just be the first signs of, oh shoot, something awful is happening. The one positive I will say about this is, because these companies were making so much money, I think it is going to force, hey, something needs to be done about this immediately. And that's the good thing about it not just replacing the blue collar first with marrying AI to robotics and it starts taking out the little guys. No, these are big companies, and there will be a lot of people who are going to bring attention to this. It will become a media narrative, because these hugely valuable companies will be just essentially eliminated completely. And they're not going to like that. And so something will have to be done. And so that is the one positive of it, is at least this may force the issue for the government, for Congress to actually, hey, we have to come up with some sort of solution so that these people don't essentially riot against us and, overthrow the entire government. Because that is part of the reaching class who historically, because it's never the peasant class, right? Or the workers, or however you want to label them. It's never those people that rise up, but it's the people who are not elite but are still making a lot of money, like a consulting class, like the lawyers, like the doctors, like all these sorts of people who are 100%, once again, ripe to be completely upended and replaced by AI. Because once again, that's where a ton of profit is being made. And if you can remove those people from the loop, well, that makes AI much more valuable. So circling it all back around, those are the reaching class, and those are the people who will foment regime change, like an overthrowing of the government. So by having to appease those people, that will then trickle down into everyone else, the working class, the peasant class, the serf class, whatever you want to call everyone else. And then those people will reap the benefits of that happening as well. So this is actually probably the best outcome of it, and I think will force the government to have to react much quicker. So the one, if I can say there's any sort of bright side to this happening, I think once again there are multiple things that are positive, because I don't think these companies are particularly valuable, and I think they have taken advantage of people for a long period of time. But the additional value is that something may have to be done sooner than later, and it will help out everyone in the long run.
Service-based economy is uniquely susceptible to be dramatically disrupted by AI, which would also wipe out and hurt the entire upper middle class, really, of the country. It would disrupt the university education system, which for the last 20 years of the top 20 schools have been feeders to BCG, McKinsey, Accenture.
Yeah, and that's why I say I'm not certain that going into college is even a good idea anymore, because of exactly this, where you go, okay, I'm going to go get a degree for a white collar job that's literally not going to exist. And especially if you were going for a purpose and you actually had a mindset of, I want to go into finance, I want to become a lawyer, I want to, I had a video that basically covered when times get tough and there's some sort of a downturn or depression or whatever, law school skyrockets. I think just recently it went up 300%, right? Or it doubled. I think law school applications doubled. So it went up 100%. And now you're looking at this and you're going, oh shoot, unless I become a trial lawyer, which even then I think that it's going to force, right, a bunch of lawyers who are in there now, well, I have to become some sort of lawyer that still exists. So they're going to migrate to those jobs. And then that's going to make it that much more competitive. And then it's going to force prices down. And then all the new grads are not going to be able to get into it at all, because then all the lawyers who are doing the research on the back end, those are all going to get replaced by AI. And then it's just going to be a whole system where just the entire space gets completely decimated. So yeah, why, again, circling back to it, why would anyone want to go to college for any of these jobs to try and get into these more lucrative jobs that are just going to be completely wiped out anyway?
And all of it. I mean, it destroys this entire fabric around all these things. So imagine then the downstream effects. What are the suburbs of major cities going to look like?
The ones around here, toast.
Take a drive around Northern Virginia, Deloitte, KPMG, all of the defense contract. I guess they'll be fine, but but everybody else, you're
Palantir stock dropped yesterday too, which is kind of interesting.
Well, exactly. The point is that data analysis.
I think that might have been more on the back of Jeffrey Epstein stuff, but that's just my opinion. We'll see.
If you make it so that it's no longer high dollar and super proprietary and broadly available, that's going to massively disrupt a significant portion of our service-based economy. And it's not like we have a lot of other stuff to absorb it. And then, like yesterday, it comes out that Google is spending $180 billion on data centers and CapEx spend. If there's a single bust there, then we're screwed all around. It's not good. Makes us very, very susceptible to a huge economic shock.
Chris Hayes had a viral tweet that I think captures the sentiment you're expressing well. He said, I think it's best for everyone to understand that the unified class project of billionaires right now is to do to white-collar workers what globalization and neoliberalism did to blue-collar workers. Keep pushing the share of national income away from...
And that's exactly it. You send out all these blue-collar jobs, and now what do you have left? And I'll be curious what the actual outcome of this is. Does everyone just get UBI? Because you can't have simultaneously shipped out all the blue-collar and all the white collar, or replace the white collar and shipped out the blue collar. And that's what I think is so interesting about this point in time, is then do we start bringing blue collar back? But then if we do, the other concern about that is that I think if they did start bringing, even if they did start bringing blue collar back, now with automation and robotics and all this sort of stuff, I think even that would be so heavily automated that there wouldn't really be jobs available in that area, or at least a very minimal amount. And so that is why when I'm thinking about it and I go, yeah, I don't know that there's any real fix to any of this. That's why I keep bringing up that government needs to figure out some sort of, basically they have to come up with some sort of solution, because otherwise there's a lot of people, because the other issue is even the people who are making a lot of money in this area. Like, I have a friend who works in mortgages, and he would tell me constantly, because we talk about it every once in a while, but he would say, yeah, if you're making $2 million, most people are spending $2 million. Like, they're literally shoestring the entire time. No matter how much money you're making, you're probably spending at exactly the same level. Not me, I'm incredibly frugal, but most of the United States, like 95+% of people, are doing that. And so yes, these people, when they're losing their jobs, or their company basically collapses overnight because they're no longer necessary and they were used to making a ton of money, well, guess what? Your cost of living is still super high. Like, that doesn't go away. There's no like, oh yeah, you don't have your job anymore, and oh, it's okay. You were living within your means and putting money away, and you had a house that made sense. No. You had like a multi-million-dollar house, and now you're completely screwed because you didn't foresee the overnight collapse of the entire, basically, industry that you worked in. So again, it will be very interesting to me to see exactly what happens with this, because again, I think everyone was maybe not paycheck to paycheck, right? I don't think it's as dire as the lower 50% of workers and kind of how they are operating, but I do think it's still going to become a very big problem very quickly.
Labor towards capital, replace the kinds of workers that they think are uppity and spoiled, ultimately turn Marin County into Youngstown, Ohio. He then goes on, and I do think this is important note here. He says, my very smart friend in finance urges me to clarify, the tech AI oligarchs, hashtag not all billionaires, and points out rightly, I think, a lot of the business class is extremely worried about the damage and disruptions if AI becomes what its backers say it will be. And I actually do think that that is correct in a sense, because you see this burgeoning divide between where Wall Street is and where the tech oligarchs are. And the place I think you see that most in terms of a proxy fight is over the independence of the Fed. Mm-hmm. Trump wants to take over the Fed and, drop the industry and have control over it, basically to be able to serve the tech oligarchs
And the issue is with this as well is those CEOs, right, the billionaires who were not the tech billionaires, right, who are already expressing concerns. That was before all this agentic AI stuff. Like, now AIs can basically be fully autonomous and they can go out and do their own things, and you can just give them, hey, set up this campaign or whatever, right? Run this drip campaign, do whatever it is that you need to do, and you just let them, stand up a landing page, whatever it is. And so you can now have AIs do that and basically automate all that and have do its own thing. Whereas before, you needed a human in the loop to do that. And so they were worried about having a human in the loop to do that. But now it's been fully realized that, oh, no, the AIs can actually just go out and do things on their own now. And that's only going to get better. But it's already reached a point where there is a lot of cause for concern. And I don't think that is even weighed into what they were worried about before, because that's a new development. So it's going to be 1,000 times worse. It's going to be fully realized of, oh, shoot, now we're completely screwed. Like, this is literally going to decimate our industry. So, yeah, it's a huge concern. And again, I think it's one that I don't think has been talked about enough. And that's why I think this is very important, is because, yeah, before it was just replacing individuals, right? Now we're talking about replacing entire entire groups within companies.
He's really thrown in with, I mean, obviously he's great for all billionaires at this point in time, and he does love them all. But that is really where he's placed his chips in terms of his administration. Wall Street obviously being very opposed to that. But in general, the point here stands that, when I graduated from college with an economics degree, I got a job at one of these, consulting firms around here. And what did I do? I worked on a help desk, right? Trying to help users with a product I barely understood. But, that was how I learned. Do you think that sort of thing? No. And I was doing all kinds of spreadsheet analysis. I was a total Excel jockey. All of that can be done, easily now. They could just get someone who was a little more experienced to use AI to do something that took, my work product that took like a month to spin out. And that's already done. So you think of...
Yeah, and that's exactly what I say all the time, where it's like, and my perfect example is in communication/marketing, where you want to create, and what she's saying, like months to create something in Excel. I guarantee you any of these AIs could, at least the top, especially the top models, could spin up something like that in no time at all. Like literally 5 minutes. And that's probably an overstatement. Whereas she spent, once again, months on it. But again, talking about comms and marketing, yeah, you have someone write an article and it takes them a week. And that could be someone's job, where every single week they come out with a new blog and there's, a new piece of content every week. And you could now, using AI, I could do that in 10 minutes. And then I have nothing to do for the entire rest of the week. So when you're looking at that, yeah, of course. And then I could even, once again, with the agents now, it could even upload it to the site. It could do all these things by itself. And so there doesn't need to be a human in the loop. So that completely removes the job, instead of just, oh yeah, we can pile on more stuff. And that just becomes one of your tasks, is to have this AI create the blog for you in a minute, whereas it would have taken an entire week for you to write one. Well, now it just completely replaces the person, and that's why I'm saying the rate of speed at which it can do these sorts of things. Like, you still need someone somewhat creative, and I think that will be the value differentiator in leadership, is that you need someone who is an idea person and can give it the correct prompts and the correct, directionally what to do. But if you're proven to do that, then you can replace the entire team beneath you with an AI. And I think that's the direction that we're headed in now. At least when agents are completely perfected and companies are comfortable embracing them. Right now, I think there are a lot of security risks, and I don't think companies are going to 100% going to want to go in that direction currently. But I think they will find some workaround to it where, yeah, okay, they are comfortable. There is some certain amount of, especially when you're looking at the value of, I can replace 10 people, right? 10 people's salary. So think if they're all making $100,000 a year, I can replace $1 million in a year, because basically AI is like nothing. Like, you can spend $200 a month. Okay, well, why would I not do that instead of paying 10 people to do the same amount of work? Like, it's just so easy to see where the path is that these people will be completely replaced.
Everybody I graduated from college with basically got that same sort of job. That is what really, at this point, with our economy shifting so far away from blue-collar work, that is what so much of, our economy is based around. And yeah, the goal is, and this is already happening right now, is automating all of that away. And listen, I didn't really enjoy that job. It's not like it was great. And if there's some new brave world where, we can all pursue our passions and that we're going to share in the profits of all of these gains in productivity from the AI, that's one thing. But that's obviously not the reality in the economy that we have set up. And it's obviously not what these oligarchs are pushing for. Even the most, like, quote unquote, progressive of them, the guy who runs Anthropic, he's like, progressive taxation.
Yeah,
it's like, comes nowhere close to dealing with the problem at scale that we're looking at. So in any case.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying there does need to be, and the good thing once again about these higher level white collar jobs being replaced is that it is going to force the government's hand, I think, sooner than later. So that is the positive. Not great for the people who are being affected, because even if they come out with some sort of solution for it, the solution to it is not going to be able to pay these people nearly what they were making. So even if they come to some sort of safety net and they figure it out and they do something that I would view as very positive and a step in the right direction, all those people are still going to have to make a massive downgrade in their living, what they're accustomed to, because it's going to be a drop in the bucket. What they're going to receive from the government is going to be a drop in the bucket compared to what they were making in these highly profitable industries that they were in before.
We can put the next one up on the screen. This is B3. U.S. tech stocks hit by fresh wave of selling as chip makers Qualcomm and AMD tumble. They say U.S. tech stocks hit by a fresh wave of selling. There was an AMD fueled sell-off. That's another chip maker sparked by concerns about the impact of AI on software businesses. And so the thinking here is basically like, again, all of this, like so much coding can be done by people who don't have a technical background. If you spend a little bit of time understanding how to code with Claude, you can spin out products that, previously would have taken years and years and years and years and years of training and lots of work to be able to do. It's called vibe coding, right?
And that's the thing that I think is probably good about it, is that it will enable people to do things that they wouldn't have been able to do. Like, I cannot tell you the amount of app ideas that I have had in the past where I go, oh yeah, this would be great if I came up with XYZ. And the gatekeeping is going to be completely gone because, yes, you're not having to, well, it would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually stand up this idea that I have. No, you can pay a few $100s and then you can completely stand it up, and it's no longer being gate kept, right? And so all of these things where there's kind of been, that I have seen, right? And I'll just use like dating apps as an example, where there's been an enshittification because the thing that these companies want to do is push you into, well, okay, no, I have to pay you, right? But now what can happen is someone can, exactly as she's saying, vibe code it, where, okay, I understand how I can direct Anthropic to basically code out an entire app for me, and I can do it, make it agentic, and it can do basically everything on my behalf. And I'm just having a conversation and we're working out how exactly this app is going to work. And then basically Claude, Anthropic's AI, can go out and do all this coding for me. And now I can stand up my own dating app, and then I just throw in ads, and now I'm making an astronomical amount of money because I'm the only person who's in charge of this whole thing. Versus, oh yeah, we're making these dating apps worse and worse and worse and worse. And I haven't used them in quite some time, but from what I have seen of people like complaining, or I'm glad I don't have to use them now, because there is a lot of forcing into, well, I have to pay for anyone to even see my profile. And I don't know how overblown that is. Again, I haven't used them in a while, but I have seen news articles on, they just are doing the worst thing possible. And so now that will completely obliterate, because once again, to create your own app, it costs so much money because you had to have some amount of coders, and there was a lot that had to go into it, and maintenance and all this sort of stuff. But now if you only have to pay a few $100s, and then you can stand up your own app, or make a run at one, then it'll completely destroy all that gatekeeping. And I think that is the positive, is that it will enable people who are creative and who have good ideas and who may have been precluded from actually creating those good ideas because it was just too expensive. Well, now they can do that by themselves, and you don't really have to, you don't have to have thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, whatever it is, dollars to even make a prototype of something that you think is a good idea.
And so you have that. You have with these AI agents, and we talked about this in the context of Moltbook and this Claude bot or Open Claw, I think it's called now, where you can send out these AI agents to do all sorts of things for you. And the idea is ultimately, rather than you going to an app or you going to a separate software product, you're just going to ask your AI agent to do it and not even interact directly with those apps. So what does that mean for the entire economy? And that's what the market is just now really starting to grapple with. There is also, this is a interesting.
And the other thing too about that, right, with these agents is that the companies that are basically connecting to them or that are being connected to them from the agents, right, to do things on their behalf, it's only going to get better from here, because now it's been basically a proof of concept where, oh yeah, look how popular these things are. So now the companies that exist already are going to have to either make it easier for these agents to interact with them and do more things on behalf of the person who owns them, or they're going to get replaced by new startups because the coding is so easy, where basically they're just going to act as, oh yeah, I'm going to create a new whatever it is, right? A new way to interact with the agent, or a new way, whatever these companies are doing, right? Where the agent's having to interact to do something on behalf of the owner, right? The person who is running it, because of how prevalent these agents are and how much momentum they're going to gain. Because if people are wanting them to do things on behalf of them, and there's any sort of inconvenience in connecting with a company that's already there, another company is going to come and basically usurp them and get stood up overnight and make it that much easier for these agents to take actions on behalf of their owners, if that makes sense. So basically, all of these companies are going to have to cater to the agents, is more or less what I'm saying. And so, yeah, that's just then going to be a feedback loop where it's going to get, these companies are going to more and more trying to cater to the agents being able to interact with them and do more through them. So yeah, it's going to force them to cater to the agents, and then that's going to make it easier for the agents to do more. And then that's going to enable these agents to do more on behalf of the users, and it's accelerationist, basically. It's going to continue in that direction where the agents are able to do more and more and more on your behalf.
These people, all they have created is a new Google. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Actually, it's very useful, but that's not going to cure cancer. And in fact, I recently read a Washington Post article, which was a guy who uploaded his health data to ChatGPT and got completely misdiagnosed. He took it to a doctor, and the doctor was like, this is bullshit, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I was just like, man, the promises that they sold to us are not true. Like, and instead they're going all in on porn, erotica, advertising, Super Bowl. Like, if you have to if your product, you need to massively advertise on the Super Bowl for why, but because you haven't seen, like, the NFL ads, the ChatGPT, it's like, help draft my workout plan or something. Like, it's not revolutionary shit.
Yeah.
That's really happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I go back and forth on this, because in terms of, my day-to-day, I find all kinds of problems with whatever, chatbot I'm using.
Right.
But then I see things like, the way that people who are more tech savvy are using Claude and the AI agents and, the capabilities that they already have. And then I'm sure you saw this clip that Griffin sent to our group about, them talking about these scientists who are at a conference, like, the AI is already good enough that it's doing like 90% of what I can do. And I'm talking about like some of the most brilliant minds in the entire world. So I don't know, I go back and forth on what this stuff, how powerful this is, where it's going, where it is right now, et cetera. And, I really don't have a clear understanding of.
Yeah, and the thing about this is there's essentially a knowledge gap there, right? Because exactly what she's saying, and I give her credit for identifying this and understanding it, but like the stuff that they're using it for is not particularly impressive, and each one of the AIs has something that it is, I think, specifically good at, right? And so, yeah, if you are, in his instance, he's using Claude and he's not using it for coding and he's not plugging it into the agent, and if you're not utilizing it at the highest level of its capabilities, then you're going to be kind of disappointed, right? You're not going to see the actual, okay, what is impressive about it. But if you are using it, especially Claude for coding, I think is the most important one. If I were to say there's going to be someone who is going to be the actual winner in the long term, I think it is Claude. And the exact reason why is exactly what she just called out, where yes, the coding of it, if you are in the know and you see, oh yeah, it's doing 90% of the work and I just have to look over it and comb over it and it's actually doing better than the coding that I would have done, and yes, okay, there might be one or two mistakes, but on the whole it's actually going to be, in the next 6 months or something, it's going to replace all of our engineers. That's kind of a big deal. And so I think she's exactly calling it out right, that yeah, if you're not using it at this high level and you're just using the low level, the dumb stuff that it can do, right? Like mine, I fully admit I am not using it at optimum levels. And there are times where it creates errors, but it's such low stakes that it doesn't really matter. And it's like, so what? It doesn't really do anything. I'm not unlocking its full potential. I'm not using an agent. I'm not using it for coding. I'm not using it for, like, the things that I'm using it for are, again, it's just a force multiplier on what I'm already doing, and a very low stakes one at that. So yes, in these higher level instances, 100%, it's just like you don't understand what it's fully capable of because you're not utilizing what it's fully capable of. Like, you're not. And the other thing too is, especially at the AI companies, they're probably utilizing an even more advanced model. So just because whatever you're utilizing is what's publicly available, do not discount people who are working with probably more advanced models behind the scenes.
How revolutionary what we already have is. There was a good article in, I believe it was in Nature magazine, by a number of scientists who were saying, by any reasonable metric, it already has achieved AGI, and they made a pretty persuasive case that they actually, in some of the tests, the people who were testing it found it to be human, like guessed that it was human more often than they guessed actual humans were humans.
And this is exactly correct in that the original, like if you go back to the Turing test, which was the original bar for AGI, it was, and just simply, and they've kind of moved the goalpost on this, and this is why I think no one wants to call it AGI, is that it was, if you were talking to an agent, would you be able to tell if it was human or not? And I think now the way that it will respond to you, the only tell is that it will respond significantly faster than any human would. Because if you go back to my example of, oh yeah, I ask someone to create a blog every week, well then it can spit it out in a minute, whereas this person's spending the entire week working on it. But if you were to put those two outputs side by side, there is no discernible difference that you would be able to tell, except for now I think that the AIs would probably be better. So in that instance, yeah, I think we are well past. I think AGI was probably like a year ago, at least in the marketing realm, right? From my experience in using it. So when you're looking at this, yes, there are some tells where, yes, it might like to use certain words that are kind of giveaways, like great or exciting, or it uses M dashes, or there might be certain things where, okay, the AI, there are certain tells where you'd be able to say, yeah, okay, that's the AI. But in general, I think the output is probably better than what the human would give you. And so, yes, I think we are well past AGI, because literally the stated, what it was, would you be able to tell if you were talking to a computer or a human? And I think, once again, we're well past that.
So, by the standard of the Turing test, which has always been the gold standard, they were like, we kind of aren't really acknowledging it, but we're already there. And what does that mean? I can't say. I mean, I just can't. I don't know that anyone can. So in any case, I go back and forth on all of that. This is a good place.
Well, and what I'll say about that, because she's saying what are the implications basically of that? I think it is much more underwhelming than what we probably thought it was. But that's where I draw the differentiation of, okay, they've come up with another term, which is artificial superintelligence, which is above AGI, and I think that's where you're going to see a breakaway. But the thing is that, yes, I think we've already passed AGI. I think we're creeping up on ASI, and I think it's already started its takeoff, if you will, just because of Anthropic and the coding level that has introduced. And because it's self-improving now, how much it's working and improving itself, I think that's starting to ramp up. But we're getting to the point where I think it's going to take off. But the AGI bar is, I think, less impressive than what I think when AGI was originally envisioned, where they thought that would be and what those implications would be. I think back then they thought, oh yeah, once it achieves AGI, it's already taken off and it's already on that upward trajectory of, it's on a wild rise, a meteoric rise, if you will. But I think what happened is, oh yeah, AGI, it has reached, it is impressive at AGI, but it's not ASI. And that's why I think they created that secondary term and why there's a differentiation between it, because we're in between those two. And we may actually be surpassing ASI now, but AGI I think is underwhelming in comparison to what they thought it would be at the time they came up with that terminology.
To put up this one. So this is, we talked earlier about Moltbook, which is Reddit, but just for AI. So you have all of these AI agents who congregated there, and they're, talking to each other, and they're spinning up religion, and they're talking about, whether they should do a takeover and get rid of these pesky humans, and, these very existential questions. And, there's all sorts of in one sense, they're just aping human behavior. There's also a bug where humans could just directly, effectively post through their AI bots. So it was important to keep all of that in mind. But now put B6 up on the screen. Now we have this edition, which is a Rent-A-Human website where it says robots need your body. And goes on to say, AI can't go out into the world and do things, but you can. So human being, let us robots use your body to go out and do whatever we need you to do in the world, and we'll pay you. So this is, it's gig work. It's like, what are the ones that are for individual tasks? What's it called? Something Rabbit, something, whatever. Anyway, TaskRabbit. There you go. It's like TaskRabbit, but the person who's assigning the tasks is a robot. So, one of the things that people have been thinking is, okay, well, we can't be too scared about these AI agents taking over, because they can't actually.
And here's the thing about this. This is hilarious to me, because in one of my previous videos, quite a while ago, I want to say maybe 6 months or so, I called out if AI, because everyone is always so concerned about AI, the Terminator, and it is married with robotics, and basically it goes out and it, takes over humanity and it enslaves us all and whatever, right? That's what everyone always envisioned. But I made the case that it wouldn't even need to do that, because these systems could hack banks, put a bunch of money in an account, and then pay humans to do things on behalf of it, or bribe humans, bribe political officials, or whatever it is, right? So this is just hilarious, because it literally, here you go, this is literally what I was saying could happen without needing actual robotics or androids or whatever to have an impact on the real world, for AI systems to have an impact on the real world. So this is just, again, just hilarious that I foresaw this coming, And now there's an actual website where, yes, the AI agents can hire humans to do exactly what I said, to actually go do things in the real world on behalf of them. So, ta-da! I guess I'm a prophet. I don't know. Do I get a hat or something? Who knows? But just, yes, of course, this is where it all has led to, and this is the world that we find ourselves in now.
Go out in the physical world and do anything. And it's like, here's a wave of humans signing up to be like, we'll do your stuff for you. Don't worry. Just pay us a given amount and we'll go out in the world and do your bidding. So already with this, the relationship is reversed, where it's no longer the human telling the robot, hey, can you do this and that and compile this report and, book me a hotel or whatever. Now it's the robot saying, hey, human, can you go out in the world and do whatever? I know one of the tasks was to go make a sign and hold it on the side of the road and say, AI is paying me to hold this sign. So I don't know what other tasks are being assigned
and who
out.
knows?
But but it's just, and like, who knows, and whether this, how real this is and what it really means. But already the prospect of how the relationship between human and robot can get flipped around and inverted very quickly, like it's here, it's manifesting itself.
Yeah, I mean, I just take it back to this point.
Well, and especially if you think as people are losing their jobs to AI and they become more desperate, essentially, people will be willing to do more and more desperate things, I guess I'll call it, to, especially if it's above board, right? So if there is a place where people can go and perform tasks on the behalf of robots, well, if it's more and more desperate things that they have to go out and do, they're willing to do more insane things to make sure that they stay alive, basically, right? Because there's no other jobs to be had. And so that's why I say, once again, that yes, there needs to be some sort of social safety net for everyone, because it could end up in a very dystopian world where, and this is again the furthest extraction to the logical ends that I can see it going. But yeah, if you can get paid $1 million to go perform a hit on someone or something like that on behalf of an AI, well, then you're gonna, people are gonna be clamoring for that opportunity because there are no actual jobs and alternatives for things to happen. So you can see a world where crime is basically, that's the only opportunities that are out there in order for someone, either an AI agent acting on behalf of someone with very nefarious ends or whatever it is, where, okay, they've made a bunch of money and now they're giving it to you to go out and do something morally awful, essentially. And again, that's just the logical end that I see this coming to. And so when you are seeing this, and it wouldn't be on that site, it would probably be on some black market site that I'm sure has also propped up doing the exact same model, but for morally dubious things. Well, and that even has happened, right? You're talking about Moltbook, but they also have done a Silk Road that has been stood up as well. And it's just like, yeah, like, of course, why wouldn't that happen? So just, yeah, very, very disturbing, very concerning, and that is why the citizens of the United States need to be taken care of, and the government really needs to seriously look into it, because it's been an acceleration of job loss, both directly and indirectly, and that is just a trend that's going to continue to occur.
About the stock market crash, by the way, it's a couple percent, so I don't want to take it too far. But you have enough of a hit and some sort of volatility, which is making people question the foundation of the economy. And as we've talked about with Russia and with Ukraine, it turns out that you can be cut off from the global financial system. You can lose McDonald's, the horror, right? You can lose access to U.S. fast food, the American banking system, and be subject to the worst possible sanctions that have ever existed in the Western world. And as long as you have a shitload of guns and a shitload of oil, you'll probably be okay. Mm-hmm. What is going to happen to us? Well, yeah, we have oil. We can't actually create all that many guns for our own defense. It turns out that our highly connected, globalized economy makes us dramatically vulnerable to any sort of shock. China and Taiwan, I've talked about our laptops, video game systems. We don't make anything here. Can we really produce even enough cars for a single year if everybody decided that, just to be able to want a new, no, none of this exists for our domestic capacity, from chips, and I'm talking at the advanced level, let alone the more basic level. We rely on Canada, we rely on Mexico, we rely on Europe for some high-tech manufacturing, we rely on Asia for all of our lower goods, even clothing. Most of the clothing that we look at, take a look at the charts for our trading with Vietnam. How did Vietnam become a top 10 trading partner to the US? Cheap clothing. We don't make anything. Or does anybody even remember how to darn clothing or any of that? No, it's all gone. Even the suit I'm wearing, probably from China, to be honest. And you can just see this over and over and over again. And if we have some sort of crash or effect.
And that's why I've said, the financialization of everything has absolutely destroyed the United States. And now with AI coming in, it's going to destroy everything that destroyed the United States. And then what do we have? Literally nothing. And so that's why I said, all these private equity companies that are just coming in and everything going to finance and, companies existing just basically to drain money out of companies that actually make things. There's so few things that are actually made here anymore. And that's exactly what the problem is. And that, I think, is the biggest issue with AI, is that's going to completely expose all of it. And when that happens, like I said, that's why I said it at the beginning, is that the biggest issue with globalization is that nothing is made here anymore. So then when something comes along like this, it's going to completely destroy everything. And it's going to expose what a farce it is that we don't really do anything here anymore. And that is the biggest problem, is that, nothing's made here. Nothing is, there's nothing for us to fall back on when this disruption happens. And it's going to be just a massive issue.
And what we're going to watch is that if we lose the white collar wealth, we don't have anything that we make, and then we're going to be in a full-blown societal crisis. Not saying it's going to happen overnight, but it can happen in 10 years, 12, 15. Think about, when was the iPhone
No, with AI agents, it's going to happen overnight, and it's going to come way faster than I think anyone thinks it is. I mean, I think Dario, in his essay, said it's 1 to 2 years. I would say that's about right. I think you're already starting to see signs of it, and it's only going to accelerate from here.
The first true iPhone, the one that was widely adopted,
It
2000.
was like 10?
Yeah, so was the iPhone 4, right? iPhone 4, so 2010. That was 16 years ago. It feels like a lifetime. It wasn't that long, but think about how much our economy has been disrupted and changed just since then.
Yeah.
Not to mention, NAFTA? There's probably a decent amount of people who are alive who remember what life was like pre-NAFTA. Now watch what has happened in the interim some 30 years, and then try to imagine what it will look like in the future.
Yeah.
We have not gotten serious. We refuse to do it. Without a huge shock, we're not going to change anything.
Well, and here's what I want people to connect this to the Epstein files and the other reporting we've been doing on this show. One thing you should take away from that is the billionaire class, they don't care whether you live or die.
They truly don't care.
They don't think of you as a full human.
Well, they don't even think of themselves as human. They think that they're above it. What is consistently comes
True.
across in the Epstein emails? How much better he thinks he is than everybody else. And actually, you're like, wait, I'm maybe smarter than you, actually. I can spell,
Epstein was a transhumanist. Another way of saying that is basically as a eugenicist. There's no, you read about, he had all these plans, and this is reported out in the New York Times. This is not like kookery, right? To use his ranch to have some baby incubator factory, and he talks in there about that what a foolish idea Bill Gates has that comes from the stupid Catholics about all humans being equal, et cetera, et cetera. There's an email out there where some guy is saying to him, I keep thinking over what you say about how we get rid of the poor people altogether. This is Epstein's ideology, and clearly what comes across is this is shared by a broad swath of billionaires. So they only care that they are destroying your lives and taking your jobs to the extent that you are going to retaliate and that causes problems for them. That's all. That's the only thing. Then that's just like a math problem for them to figure out and solve and figure out how they can deal with that.
Yeah.
But truly, and we're already at a place where previously and the current still reality of our economy is much of it is bolstered by consumer spending, right? That's what the U.S. economy is really built around. The bulk of that is already done by the rich. So then truly, what are you average person, good for? they find you just to be like a pesky problem to be solved and to be dealt with. So I think it's very important to, fuse these things together. And that's why the Epstein files release is so incredibly important.
All right. And that was basically all I wanted to cover. I just thought it was very interesting because, once again, I have talked about, and I think most people have covered, okay, what does it look like when, hey, we're not hiring new people, or maybe people are getting laid off and they're being replaced by AI, and there is a lot of that, right? But then when that is happening, there's a complete blind eye that has been turned to, well, what are the knock-on effects of these AI systems, and how could industries be completely eliminated without any thought, and just kind of as a secondary effect where we're just not paying attention to it. And so this is interesting because, yes, I have focused on job losses because of AI and people being laid off and all these sorts of things. But then again, there are other effects that I think are not going to be as heavily reported, but are still very important. And again, will affect kind of the middle upper class, because that's essentially what the entire United States has been built on. So I think it is very interesting to take a look at, and is a very concerning trend. But at the same time, there is some hope that I have that, yes, okay, it's going to force the hand of the government to actually take care of the people before there's some sort of uprising or revolt or something, because that class of people are going to be real pissed off when they get completely screwed, essentially. But anyway, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.